Good morning, everyone. It's Bob again with a daily Devo. It's Monday, and we are headed into kind of the whole Christmas season. Very excited about that, even though this is also weird. Well, I want to continue on the topic that we started last week, and that is this idea that of divine orchestration, that God is orchestrating things in the midst of human chaos, that God's will and God's purposes are still going forward, that God has not sort of taken a nap, that I like the way that Daryl Johnson puts it, that he said that there is a control center in this universe, a headquarters, a control center, and there is someone seated on that throne, and that is God. And so, and for us, and for the people that have interacted with the scripture over all these years, that God, this actually brings great a settling and a peace to our hearts, a calm in the midst of the storm that other people simply do not have available to them. I love the way that David writes this in Psalm 27. This is the old New American Standard Version, and it goes like this: I would have despaired unless I had believed that I would see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. I would have despaired. I would have given way to despair had I not believed that eventually I'm going to see God's goodness while I'm still alive. Excuse me. And this whole thing is part of what biblical trust actually looks like for you and I, that we know that in the midst of really traumatic times, in the midst of chaos, that God is still working, that God is doing something great, and that God is doing something redemptive, and that even though he is not authoring the chaos, that he is going to use the chaos to bring about his purposes. And this pandemic, same thing. Political season, same thing. The injustice and different things that our culture is racked with at this point in time and people are wrestling with, all of that stuff God is using for his purposes. Now, I think that we tend to get sort of mired down in the human level of everything, and that actually causes us to fret, to get angry, to pressure, to get stressed, and we just, when we simply look at the horizontal instead of seeing that God is still good and that God is still interacting, that we get really pretty anxious and we get upset. And I want to say to you this morning that God is doing something good, even though the chaos seems to reign at this point in time. Now, there's some people that would say that God is authoring the chaos. I simply don't agree with that. But is God using this chaos? Absolutely. Is God revealing some things about us and about America and about Americans and about just people in general in the midst of this whole thing? Absolutely. And with all that in mind, I think you and I can count on the fact that God is, in our darkest times, able to grab things and actually use them for his good and generous and beautiful purposes. And this is God's will for you. This is God's will for me. And all of these outside the box things that I've seen that are actually, I'm still in Acts chapter 10 with the first kind of foray with the gospel into a very, very non-Jewish audience, and with a Roman centurion named Cornelius. It's all very outside the box stuff that's happening. But God is speaking to Peter in a way that helps him to be able to engage the chaos and the stuff that's outside the box in a way that's constructive and in a way that's beautiful and cooperative. And I think that's kind of where the Lord wants you and I to be, is to say, Lord, what are you doing in this? I want to cooperate with what you're doing in the midst of outside the box chaos that I do not understand. I want to cooperate with you. What are you doing and how can I cooperate? What's my part in this? Now, we can always count on that God is doing something that has to do with bringing his love to people, but how is that actually happening? How do I participate in this? And how do I jump aboard with the God who loves all of these people and loves me? How do I jump aboard? Divine orchestration, that God is doing something that is beyond the chaos. God, how are you working and how do you want to work with me in the chaos? It starts with me resting in you, by me focusing back on you, by me getting vertical with you, and then starting to work that out in the horizontal, in this world's realm. So that's our word for today, divine orchestration. That we see that in the nativity narrative, that God is doing all these things, bringing all of these threads together for the Messiah's arrival. We see it in Jesus his death on the cross, all this chaos, all this evil. It seems like evil has just been turned loose against God. How could God be working? And then we have resurrection. This is God. He is able to do things that no one was able to expect. And that's our God. That's the God that you and I trust. Let's trust him today. Let's trust him as we go into this Christmas week. I love you. I'm praying for you. Thanks so much for joining me. I'm dressed up like this because my house is chilly, and it's kind of a chilly, overcast morning, and I love it. But I can't figure out whether I want to keep my hat on or keep it off. Anyway, have a great day.